Okay.
You want me to say hello?
Yeah, sure. Everybody's here.
Okay.
I'm just admitting people as they come.
Okay.
So welcome, everyone.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm going to do an official welcome. I know many of you, but not all of you, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. My name is Elizabeth Reese, and I'm the director of the Art Center of the Capital Region. And I want to thank you all for coming together for this dialogue. We have a lot of our own hopes and dreams for public art, but because it is art in the public, that's who we need to hear from. Those of you who live and work in Troy and have your own opinions and thoughts about what we've done and where we should go. So first, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here tonight. I want to thank Belinda Cologne, our curator at the Art Center, for organizing this event. I want to thank Judy Gilmore, who is and remains the author of our plan for public art, for checking in and managing this dialogue with Belinda. It's the two of them that will lead this. And for those of you who know me, you will laugh that I will mute myself and fade into the background, which you know is something I love to do. But really, I want to thank Judy and Belinda for their work. Todd Gressy is here, who also informed that original plan. So I think we're going to have an opportunity for great dialogue. Before I hand this over, I just want to acknowledge our board chair is here, Amy Williams, and our chair of Public Art Committee, Gwen Krause, is here. And their leadership between Amy and Gwen have really helped we on the staff fulfill our programming dreams and goals. And without the leadership and support of the board of the Art Center, I truly do believe that none of anything that we're discussing today could happen. So I really want to thank Gwen and Amy for their commitment and their hard work at the Art Center. So thank you to my friends and colleagues. Finally, as a final thank you, I just want to recognize that the New York State Council on the Arts funded our original plan for public art. They funded our program over at Franklin Alley. They funded our onboarding of our curator. And without this help, without support from our New York State government, again, I don't think we would have these opportunities. So while I don't know if they're listening, sometimes I think they've got recordings everywhere, but regardless, I do want to thank them and recognize that those are all of our tax dollars at work to let us do that work. And so I thank all of you for contributing to that in a way, I suppose. So that's my way of saying hello. There are some elected officials here that I think Belinda and Judy will go ahead and recognize. So I'm going to stop and put myself on mute while they do that good work. And I just, again, want to say thank you for your time today. And I look forward to learning from all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Belinda and my name is Judy Gilmore, for those of you who don't know me, and I helped to co-author the Troy Master Plan for Public Art with my colleague Todd Gressy, who I'd worked with in Philadelphia and was very excited to bring to Troy for a wonderful engagement around the planning process. So when I was asked by Liz to really think about this with Belinda, how could Belinda and I really kind of revisit this plan in the context of everything that's happened? It's been 5 years, Liz, since we started this, which is pretty outstanding. It both seems 5 years ago, it seems 50 years ago, it seems 5 minutes ago in some ways. I think COVID has messed all of our time frames out. But 5 years ago is when that NISCA grant came in to do this work. And it's really, a lot's changed, but a lot has happened. And as somewhat of an outsider, to see how much has happened over the last few years, despite all the challenges, it's been really tremendous. And I think shows, the real commitment that the Art Center and the city of Troy made to the plan and to really putting resources here and going out and grabbing more resources. So we want to celebrate that. And we're going to talk a lot about those successes. But we decided to invite a group of people who we knew we wanted to be as part of this conversation. And we'd like to introduce those folks. So I'm going to turn it over to Belinda to just do a quick introduction with our invitees tonight. And then we are going to have time later for question and answers from everyone. But we do have some specific things we want to cover with our invited guests, and then we'll turn to the audience for a more open conversation. So I'll turn it over to you, Belinda.
Thank you, Judy. So first, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, our invitees as well as the public and colleagues. I also want to let you know that we will be recording this. So if you know anybody who wants to watch this, or if you don't want to be seen but want your name up there, that's all you. It's your decision. But we welcome you either way. Tonight we do have a multiple of different guests from Troy, stakeholders who we felt like really could adopt a conversation that we all could get involved in and really see the potential of this master plan for art. So I'm going to introduce them individually, and I'd like you all to please just give us your title and a description of your work. So we're going to start with Jade Warwick.
Hello, my name is Jade Warwick. I am a muralist, art advocate and activist, and illustrator, and youth program developer is under my belt now. And I do a lot of work all around the Capital Region, really trying to bridge education and activism within art.
Thank you, Jade. Next, I'd like to introduce Chris Nolan.
Sure. Thanks, Belinda. Chris Nolan, Deputy Mayor for the City of Troy. Really happy to be here tonight. And you hit the nail on the head. I'll just say that it's been 5 years. I was looking back at the master plan from 2018, and I remember when Liz approached me to be part of that conversation and how excited I was at that point. And I will just state the one thing that excites me, aside from the fact of seeing the public art we have here in the City of Troy, is the fact we have so many different faces around the table. Because I think that diversity, the different faces, the different voices that we have are critically important to public art as we move forward. Happy to be here tonight.
Thank you, Chris. Our next invitee is Danae Ziegler.
Hello, I'm Danae Ziegler. I work in the planning department for the City of Troy. More economic development focused right now. But I am here to help out in any way I can. I'm really excited, and I would love to see art everywhere in the city. Big fan.
Thank you, Danae. Next, I'd like to introduce Jerry Ford.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jerry Ford. I'm a homeowner here in Troy. I've made Troy my home for probably the last almost 18 years. Moved here from Florida with my family, and I wear a lot of different hats. Me and my wife, we co-founded a nonprofit, Team Hero, helping everyone recognize Opportunities, Inc. Our focus is working with young people and their families and bridging the gap between adolescence to adulthood. Also, I'm the deacon of United Ordained Church, right on 3rd and Jefferson, right around the corner where I live in South Troy. And I recently accepted a job at Troy City School District as My Brother's Keeper Director for Community and Family Engagement.
Thank you and welcome. Next, we have Rafe Larson.
Hi, everyone, really excited to be here. I'm the director of the Future of Small Cities Institute, and we're really excited. We're opening a new space in downtown Troy called the Focus Lab, which is going to be an exhibition space on the future of cities, how cities are made, and hopefully is going to function like a living room for the city in some ways. And we're also teaming up with the Children's Museum. Most of you know that CMOS had to close sadly during the pandemic, but we're bringing them back to Troy. So the Children's Museum will have a footprint in Troy again. So really excited to be here.
Thank you, Rafe. Next, I'd like to introduce Emily Mann.
Hi, I am Emily Mann. I'm the downtown city council member. Hope I've unmuted myself here. And I'm not only a downtown resident, but I also was lucky enough to have one of my buildings be a place for one of the art center's murals done by Toast Talise last summer. The first fully 3D printed mural in New York, probably in the country, and possibly the world. And it's really helped our alley attract people who are excited when they discover this public art. So yeah, I'm happy to bring the resources of the city. And I'm very, very interested in revitalizing our alleys and our sort of overlooked public spaces, like under the Hoosick Street Bridge, which is no longer overlooked at all.
Thank you, Emily. Next, I'd like to invite Carmelo Montello.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you for inviting me this evening. As mentioned, Carmelo Montello, I am your Troy City Council president. I am the only representative that represents the whole city of Troy. They say it's a part-time job, but it definitely is not. But I live, love, eat, breathe Troy. I'm born and raised in Troy, never left my hometown. Even though in various different jobs, I've traveled around the state, I love, obviously, my city. Real quick, I'm happy to see all the folks at the table this evening. I've truly seen firsthand the power of partnerships and the power of public art. So I look forward to working with all of you to really get public art in our neighborhoods. It's a huge priority of mine to revitalize our neighborhoods and the downtown, which is a neighborhood. And I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you, Carmela. Next, we have Todd Gressy.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm tuning in from Philadelphia, where I live, and that's where I met Judy. I helped Judy and the Arts Center prepare, and the city and all of you prepare this master plan for public art. And it was one of my favorite projects ever, I have to say. I was looking at it before this meeting. And Troy is one of my favorite places that I've worked. And I'm delighted that you asked me to come back and listen in. I can't wait to hear about what you've done. A 3D printed mural definitely caught my attention. So I'm just really eager to hear what you're up to, and I'm just so happy to be part of this.
Thank you for coming back, Todd, and joining us. And now I'm going to give the Zoom over to Judy.
We have one more, Belinda, Barb Nelson.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Barb. Yes, Barb Nelson, please join us.
No problem, Belinda. I'm Barb Nelson. I'm the director at TAP. We are a nonprofit community design center, been around for 55 years now. We are a state-funded neighborhood preservation corp, and one of the strongest aspects of preserving our neighborhoods is helping maintain and sustain public space as access for all persons. And public art is a wonderful way to make that happen. So we're very happy to be part of the crowd here.
Thank you again, Barb. I do apologize, but you are a very important part of this conversation.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, lead it over to you now, Judy.
Thank you. And it's good that we ended with Barb, because Barb, you know, in so many ways has really overseen a lot of the public art successes in Troy over many, many decades. So, you know, it really is because of her early work that we're still talking about murals, and we're still talking about some of these wonderful things. So thank you, Barb. We do recognize that. My job here is to quickly remind everyone the work that we did do in the plan, just so that we remember the context that we were working in, and to really, as we kind of lead this conversation, see how it fit, how that vision that came out of that planning process fits with where we are now. And do we need to revise that vision, or are we kind of moving in the right direction? And so I'm going to very quickly give you just an overview and remind everyone what we did. Again, we started in February 2017, and Todd and I worked with Liz and the city and put together a committee, a steering committee, several of the members who are here today, including Chris, who was joining us from RPI, as well as Barb from TAP. And we had the bid, the Downtown Troy bid, the Troy Cultural Alliance, of course, was represented. The Chamber was a partner, the Workforce Development Institute, the Boys and Girls Club. And as a small group, we created a process, a year-long planning process that, to Liz's credit, she let Todd and I really be experimental with an action research-oriented process, which really took us as experts out of the equation and let us actually do work that would lead to an emergent knowledge from the many resources that exist in Troy, from community members to artists to businesses, and to really think about using some of the grant money to program a space and to program a year-long schedule of activities that would allow us to kind of create data, experiment with some of the ideas that we were thinking about recommending, and to really put forth a plan that felt like it came from a wide variety of stakeholders. And it was a wonderful process. We conducted site visits, interviews, meetings, we did a survey, and again, those Explore Troy Awards and the Troy Summer Square were two of the biggest things that came out of that. Explore Troy Awards was a way that we put a call out to all residents of Troy that said to us, bring us your ideas. How would you program the public space? How would you change the public space? And we really left it very open-ended. And from this large call, we were able to select 10 artist-driven projects to inform a public space where we shut down Monument Square for 3 weeks, and we programmed this space ongoing with these projects that started in the square but traveled throughout the city. Again, that brought audiences, that brought people so that we could gather data from them, insight. It allowed us to see what kind of projects Troy wanted, what kind of projects artists wanted to bring, and again, to do this action research project. So it ended up being this very dynamic planning process in the summer of 2017. We also did a very large online survey and collected data that way, as well as interviews, public forums, presentations, and just conversations with stakeholders. So a very robust way to kind of really try to gather as many stakeholders as possible to inform this plan. All of that led to a vision that I wanted to read just for you tonight to see if this still applies. And as I read through it, I mean, please listen to kind of what has been accomplished that you know of and think about the future. But the vision that emerged was public art in Troy will be a visual expression of Troy's values. Public art in Troy will demonstrate high aesthetic expectations. It will represent different media, and it will be relevant to its site and engaging to its audience. Public art will help inform a strong civic narrative and give residents and visitors a reason to be optimistic about Troy's future. And one of the things we learned is this isn't necessarily something Troy's good at, this optimism, but I think that's changing. It will activate communities' imagination and contribute to the development of new ideas and partnerships. It will include young people and local artists and help connect them to the levers of political power. Public art in Troy will not be seen as a simple amenity. Instead, it will be viewed as a vital platform for innovative experimentation and curious exploration that becomes a part of Troy's civic and creative ecosystem, tapping into and uplifting the perception that Troy is the creative city in the capital region. As I went back and reread this, I was amazed again at what a dynamic vision for public art that really emerged in Troy. It wasn't just beautifying spaces. It was really about making artists and young people and people who aren't connected necessarily to political power part of a process that really uplifts the values of Troy. And it was really a beautiful vision that emerged. So I'll be interested to see what you guys all think of that now, and we'll be happy to share that. But from that vision, we laid out some goals, and they were goals that are, some were really obvious, things like to beautify spaces, because of course there's a lot of that work to be done in any city, but of course that came up in Troy, but also to really think about creating symbols and gateways and using public art to really create an identity in Troy, a creative and artistic identity, and to really double down on that in Troy. It was also a goal around to think about the underutilized spaces like the alleyways and the rivers, and to use public art to activate those spaces. a lot of this, as I say this, is stuff that's been happening. It's really fun to go back and see this. Another big goal was to really make sure that there was equitable access to public art resources and opportunities across the city. Another goal was to strengthen the public art ecosystem and to build a public art program, to really think about the sustainability of public art through a formal program. And then lastly, to elevate the profile and visibility of Troy's creative community and artistic community. So those were really the goals that emerged, and everything fit into those. But we were also very upfront about what limited resources that Troy has and is dealing with was in 2017 and certainly is now. And I think, again, a lot of credit to Liz for pulling in so many resources to really fund this and to get people excited about that. But out of those goals, we started to pull out some pilot initiatives that we thought could be some really easy kind of first steps to really get some of this going. And this is some of the projects that really did happen. So quickly, those pilot initiatives that we recommended were murals. Of course, the murals have happened. That's been great. Creating a neighborhood idea bank, and I think the Fish Market has served a lot of that purpose. Continuing that Troy Summer Square and the Explore Troy Awards, or some programming that really gives voice to artists and lets them have opportunity to create that vision for what public art looks like. A community meal along the river, lighting the Green Island Bridge, creating a large mural or gateway project at the Art Center, an annual light festival, and then the establishment of the Art Center as a regional resource for public art. So that was where we kind of landed with things. So with that context, we'll start the conversation. And I'm gonna ask my colleague Todd to just kick us off with just giving his thoughts on kind of where this plan landed. I mean, Todd does this work all across the country. So I was really curious, after 5 years of looking at this and working with other cities across the country, where he felt this plan fit into kind of the other work that he's done, and how he saw Troy in its process as fitting with the vision that we put forth. So Todd, curious your thoughts on the plan 5 years later.
Well, I'd feel better talking about this after I got to hear more about the wonderful projects that have happened. But as Judy said, I am a public art consultant. I work all over the country, and I primarily advise communities like Troy, nonprofit organizations, even the development community on strategies for developing public art programs, projects that help them achieve their goals for building their communities. I'd have to say I learned a ton from Judy and the Art Center and working in Troy. And as Judy said, it was a very experimental process at the time to turn over a lot of our budget to artists and simply say, show us what can be done here, show us what you'd like to do, show us what this place is all about, and show us how you can connect the community to this place through art. And I'd have to say that was sort of a foreshadowing of a practice which is increasingly common now. And it's certainly one I reflect back a lot on in other places where I work. I almost never do a project now where I don't bring artists onto the payroll, into the team to do some kind of work. And that's something I learned about in Troy. I think that we learned that simply asking artists and other creative people in a completely open-ended way, what would you like to see and do here, is really one of the best ways to surface what is the pulse of the community, what is the pulse of its creative life. And it's something, when we get a chance, we try to replicate. I think the notion of creating a place where this all happens, and though Judy described a year-long project, I really remember being involved in a very compressed way with Troy Summer Square, and I think that compressing and making the public engagement with the process so interactive and visible is really an aspiration of all projects now. So I think if I look at the broad base of work, what we did in Troy was very much on a kind of a leading edge of the kinds of things that folks would like to do now. But what I'm proudest about is reading that vision over, just thinking, I think how well the hopefully you'll feel the same way, how well it at a certain level, the plan really connected with where Troy was and who it was. And that is really the aspiration of every public art plan. The aspiration is not to put art everywhere. The aspiration is to show how the creative life of the city, the creative forces, the creative voices of the city can be an agent of change, can be an agent of identity, an agent of making people feel like they belong. And I think, just reading that over today, I was just really amazed at what we were able to achieve. So I'm really proud of it. I hope you guys are proud of it. And I can't wait to hear. And again, it's a bar that I try to reach in my other work. And I hope you guys feel the same way. I can't wait to hear more about what you've accomplished.
That's a great segue, Todd. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Belinda, but we're going to talk about some of those huge successes.
So, yeah, I mean, we had 5 years of change, right? It's been a real go and getting all this energy to create this work and create this plan. And then a few years later, we kind of got pushed back and then, went into a lockdown. So we're really excited to talk about some of the successes that we've had. So instead of me talking about anything that I was involved with, I would love to hear from some of our invitees. So I'd first like to ask Jerry, is there anything specific, Jerry, that you think was a success within our public art program within the last 5 years?
Definitely a lot of successes. Everything that's been talked about that was actually came to pass, to me, is always going to be a success, because you discussed something, we met about it, and we made some form of that plan come to play. I really enjoyed in the summertime with my family, sitting down in Freedom Square. In Summer Square downtown. It was really nice. That area was something that was really special to us. And last night I had an opportunity to visit the fish market, which was where my wife and I began to come up with the vision for our organization, Team Hero. This was when it was the cafe, the Oaks of Righteous Cafe, probably about close to 7 or 8 years. And so to see that building being used now as a place for art and its display and also programming for the youth, it's fantastic. So I think there's been a lot of successes, and I can't wait to be a part of the ones that are going to come in the future.
Thank you so much, Jerry. I really appreciate your feedback as someone who's very connected to the community of Troy and has been here for quite a long time and made a lot of relationships that really matter. I appreciate that. I also would like to ask Carmela, is there anything specific that you think we've been successful at creating with the plan in mind?
As Jerry mentioned, and everything in terms of the projects that you mentioned have had a huge impact on the city of Troy. The Center Square project, I was down there a couple times, truly amazed, and truly amazed also, like you had mentioned earlier, just the connection to the community, not just eating and dancing, but just that connection of really bringing that pride and attention to the city. But one of the major projects that, I just felt really just has an incredible impact is on the waterfront under the Hoosick Street Bridge. Jade, you were just amazing. You are amazing. We are so fortunate to have you in the Capital Region, and I love the connection to our youth. For me, it just struck me. I love seeing the youth involved. I love seeing the artwork that's on display, and just the honest diversity of the crowd that came down on the opening night. It was freezing cold on the waterfront on the mighty Hudson, and no one expected it. And it was windy as heck, but we weathered it, and just the partnerships and the folks that came out that night truly showed, and a lot of neighborhood folks came out for that opening. I truly believe that that is a gateway in our community. It's a connection to North Central. It's a connection to our neighborhoods, and it's centrally located in the city. I'm just so proud of that area, and I truly believe that that's really one of the transformational projects of public art that I've seen since I've lived here in the city of Troy.
Wow, thank you so much. I have one other person that you mentioned to ask the same question to, which is Jade. How do you feel about some of the successes in Troy? I mean, obviously, we have a lot of comments about the United Line. You just heard an amazing discussion from Carmela. So what do you think?
Yes, and thank you, Carmela. I appreciate that. And my heart fluttered a little bit. And I'm glad that you're seeing the impacts of art, because that was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted it to bridge the connection to the community. I wanted the youth there to feel safe and happy. I think it was recently called or discussed that when folks get up and go out there around the basketball court, like the kids and everything, it feels like Disneyland. So that's like, to me, just an amazing feeling that I'm very happy that folks are experiencing. But back to your question. So I have seen that there's a lot of more accessible art programs and more accessible, you've made it more accessible for artists to succeed. There's been a variety of projects, and I've known personally a couple of the artists that you've worked with, actually. And one would be Eugene O'Neill. And it's just great to see the artists that I know personally out there, because we're all connected in our own way, see them succeed and have these jobs basically and these opportunities through the art center. A lot of us have been trying really hard to get our names out there, because it is very competitive, and it's very you basically got to know somebody to know somebody sometimes just to even get a job. And the art center has shown that you are making that not so competitive for artists. You're making artists be able to grab opportunities with the support that they need. And that's something that I've seen consistently through your plan, that you're actually putting in the work to grab artists and support them and give them these opportunities. So that was something I just want to point out.
Thank you, Jade. We really are trying to expand our reach and just be a wonderful resource to connect artists to the opportunities that we have in Troy and in the region, with the help of other organizations. Obviously, we know that others are doing the same, but obviously for tonight, we're talking about Troy and the Master Plan for Art, but I don't want to not recognize our other organizations that are doing the same in our region. So thank you. I guess at this point, what I'd like to talk about is some of the challenges that stalled our projects, which I already mentioned. The lockdown, right? That was a big challenge because we really couldn't be one-on-one with people. Like Judy had said, part of the plan was to bring a dinner out to the community and really have people come together, which was a challenge for us. I'd like to discuss that more and discuss what it is that we did well within the lockdown, and what it is that we think we can do in the future to make sure that we continue to overcome some of the barriers that can happen depending on political, social, or just day-to-day challenges. So first, I'd like to ask Barb, do you have anything to offer for that?
Sure. What comes to mind? That was a lot, Belinda. So specifically during lockdown, how we were able to come together. You know, many people have mentioned the Summer Square. It was amazing how quickly the Arts Center and a county's, crisis management committee and a number of a sizable number of people came together, the bid, the chamber, to help people safely guide them to safely use the public right of way to accommodate their business, so that they did not lose a lot of business during that lockdown. And yeah, TAP was very happy to be able to put together a guideline for, how to distance your tables, how to protect your outdoor space from traffic, things like that. So that was an amazing, quick coming together of people very focused on making sure that everyone's welfare was protected, and that the public health was protected, but that we could still gather, we could still support local businesses, whether dining or shopping or whatever. Same thing with the farmers market, quickly snapping into gear to find a space where they could spread out, where they could bring in shoppers very safely and fill the space that they found with public art. So I've seen a good number of successful reactions, and the Art Center allowing TAP to have our annual event outside on their sidewalk, because we didn't feel that everybody would be comfortable being inside in an indoor space. So I think I saw the city, I saw organizations, I saw artists all pitching in together to make sure that we could, provide options for people who really were just so deprived, so trapped inside all that time. So just getting out to be able to hear music and see people. And I need to mention my favorite public art, not my favorite, but a pet of mine, the center, the Contemporary Circus and Immersive Arts Center, hosting circus performances in Prospect Park with very generous distancing between the chairs. And again, that's one of those that doesn't come to mind immediately. It's not a visual thing. It's not a mural that stays around, but it is performances, music, readings, poetry. All of these things are important in the public art scene, and being able to host those in public places for no fee, and allowing people to just enjoy them and happen on them, I think was a very successful feat that took a lot of people working together, and the support of NISCA and through the Art Center's distribution of funding. So all successes.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Barb. It is a loaded question, and I know that you were very involved with a lot that was going on in Troy, and I just wanted you to be able to discuss some of that because you were directly involved with quite a bit. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I wanted to ask the same question to Rafe. I know that you're coming in discussing a lot of downtown cities and how to revitalize them. So I just wanted to see what your opinion is of what you've experienced and how that sort of reflects on Troy's experience as well.
Well, I think there's been a really interesting evolution of public art that I've talked with a number of you about. There's always a tension sometimes when you're trying to program art where you want to bring in kind of the big outside name artist to do something kind of splashy, and sometimes when you do that, that's the detriment of the kind of community involvement that Jade was talking about. And I think ideally any sort of public art program has both the sort of kind of splashy impact that tells the story of the city to the outside, but it also reaffirms the internal narratives of the city and lifts people up within the city. And I think sometimes those are in tension, sometimes those are in concert. And I think what's really been really cool to see is the Arts Center's own sort of reflective practice in that, and the growth of the process and the projects, from Franklin Alley to the community involvement in Dividing Line. And it makes me really excited for what comes next, because I feel like the city now has built up this practice, has built a kind of community knowledge about this, and I feel is like poised to enact some of the really beautiful and noble goals that were so articulately outlined in the master plan. I had sort of glanced at the master plan, but really spent some time with it today, and it's an amazing document. I mean, it's sort of like our Constitution, right? We're going to keep returning to it and learning from it. it's going to enrich in us. And so there's a lot there to be unpacked and reflected on. But when I think about when I was reading it, any public art project should sort of celebrate the assets that a place has. And I think why so many people on this call are sort of drawn to Troy and sort of constantly who are from Troy, who are not from Troy, is that the city has just assets in spades, right? We don't always celebrate it, but it's like the compactness of the downtown, the river, which we're just kind of learning is part of our identity. And how do we, one of the recommendations was using art as that kind of conduit and literally a bridge to the river. The architecture and the alleyways. I mean, the alleyways of Troy are this like great asset that Barb has, been banging the gong for a long time. Like, we need to activate these places. So I'm really just kind of charting the trajectory of where we're going. I'm really excited for what comes next, and using this master plan as a sort of as a map is really cool.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate your reflection on what it is that we're doing and really helping us see that we are going in the right direction. Thank you. Now I'm going to pass it on to Judy.
Thanks, Belinda. I mean, I think for me, I mean, the first real project that came out of the plan was Franklin Alley. And I'm curious, kind of in hindsight, this is a question to you and Liz, but also to like Emily and other residents downtown, as well as people who visit downtown. Where does that project fit in terms of like, I know it was challenging, but like, has it been successful? Do you feel like it's engaged that site in the way that you intended?
I'll start the conversation off, and then I'm going to step away and let everyone else discuss it. But I do think that we intended it to be a place where people felt safe walking through our city. As it's been mentioned before, and with Barb's help, we've been trying to focus more on the alleyways in Troy. And I think it was a challenge to get, a lot of the materials that were being placed into the alley removed, being able to speak to all the building owners and really get them to appreciate what it is that the vision was to do this. The Art Center really was the push to get this project really completed. I think it was spoken about for a few years. And prior to my being there, we did bring an outside artist for that. So it was an experiment in how the city reacted with that, and our community members. His name is Joe Urato, and he did reach out to the Boys and Girls Club and went to the farmers market and tried to really connect with the community. But what I would say is, yes, it has really brought together some of the restaurants that are in the area who are using it. We have lights in the alley, so now it's a little safer to walk through, much safer. I would also say that we see images on social media of people taking photos there and hashtagging Franklin Alley. So it's been really great to see some of that happen.
Thanks, that's great. And Liz, yeah, I'm curious your take.
Just to piggyback on that, I agree with everything Belinda said. I think what we wanted to do with Franklin Alley was prove what we could do, prove what massive collaboration between non-for-profit and government, between agency like TAP and the Art Center, between artists and community could do. I think that coming to Troy to be at the Art Center, know that we wanted to do public art, there needed to be some proof of concept of what we meant when we said, what is public art? And I think that the Franklin Alley project demonstrated that for us. It needed laws changed, it needed legislation, it needed engineering. There was a lot more behind the scenes of that than the art project itself. If I were to change anything again, if I were to do it again today and set out to do the exact same thing, I would spend a little bit more time on criteria and parameters around maintaining it and programming it after it was finished. How does the community get to use it? How do we work on making sure it's a space for everyone? It's not just a space for the businesses that are aligned with it, as much as I like that is the case as well. And I think it's one of the, I call it a next time situation, meaning I don't regret anything that happened, but next time I would work more on that kind of program criteria.
Thanks, Liz. I think that's a great segue to talk to our city reps, Danae and Chris. I mean, you know, public art is so often a partnership with cities and municipalities, which don't often prioritize art. Can you guys talk about what that process has been like now that you're several projects into these massive collaborations and kind of lessons that have been learned?
Yeah, I kind of lead off a little bit, Judy. And I have the joy of having been an RPI before. And, you know, I came into the city here, and Liz knows this all too well. You do as well. You didn't have to twist my arm, right? And what I saw a month ago before I came into the city was a mayor that fully supports public art in the city, a city council that is active. I know we've got the city council president Montello here. We have council member Mann here, and there's many others on the city council over the years that have been supportive of public art. In addition, you have the stakeholders, the institutional stakeholders. So, you know, and I'm thinking back even to, you know, Barb, I was surprised you didn't mention breathing lights. You know, I think, you know, there's all these little glimpses of public art that we had over the years that have just started to keep the drumbeat going. And, you know, it didn't take much for us at RPI and Sage and Emma Willard and St. Peter's Health Partners to come forward and say, yes, we want to fund this. We see this as a priority. And now I'm going to put on my city hat. Yes, we see this as a priority. What I really like about it is the fact that we're normalizing public art. We're making it part of the conversation on a more regular, a daily basis. And I'm going to turn to Liz again. You know, always has a new idea, always has, you know, something else she wants to throw by us. You know, she mentioned Space Shift, the lighting project. You know, if instead of hemming and hawing and trying to figure out, you know, should we really be doing this? This is a risk. This is a chance. We just jumped in, you know, not knowing what was gonna happen here. And I know Liz and I, we had conversations over the months of what were we doing here? But we're normalizing it, and we're creating these opportunities to bring our communities together, which I'm very excited about, especially in my new role here. And I will say, Liz, I'm just gonna piggyback off your other comment. What I'm also very excited about, and what I'm really happy to hear about from everybody around the table, is you know, we have these locations. We have Franklin Alley. We had Summer Square. You know, we have the Uniting Line. How do we activate these spaces going forward now that we're moving out of the pandemic? So how do we spread public art into our neighborhoods throughout the city? But then also, how do we continue to activate these spaces? How do we make it so they are welcome to all, to be able to utilize them and that they feel at home in them? So I guess that's kind of, you know, that's the perspective. I'm 4 weeks in here at the city. In my new role as the deputy mayor. I can't, you know, tout a lot of accomplishments, and you know, but I can say that you know, I'm firmly committed to public art. You know, it excites me, and I think there's tremendous opportunity here.
Thanks, Chris. We have you recorded saying that, so we now can pull that out as needed. But that's a great segue. I mean, I do think that we can't have this conversation without mentioning the fish market. And I think that's been a tremendous kind of evolution. And so I would love to hear you guys talk about the fish market and the role that now plays in North Troy. Because I think it's going to be in the future a real kind of anchor space, like you said, Chris, for real creativity. So does someone want to talk a little bit about the fish market and kind of how that evolved and some of the challenges there?
Sure. So
yeah,
go ahead.
So I just, like I said in the beginning, me and my wife were inspired by what was going on at the fish market to start our organization. During that time, there were two priests who were in the area, Pastor Hannah and Pastor Christina, and they were using the fish market then was a cafe. And they were using it as like an after-school program in their ministry on the weekends. And a lot of the youth from the neighborhood right there used to go in there all the time. And me and my wife, we went there on Fridays and we did what we call Friday night praise party. And we would just buy pizza and have iced teas and just talk with the young people, play some music and things like that. And so to know now, like I said, last night was my first time visiting it, to know now that it's, there, it's still being used, and now it's going to be a place where artists can convene, and all this creativity is going to come out of that place, and the young people will still, from the neighborhood, will still be able to go there. That's very inspiring.
That's great, Jerry. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Jerry. The original impulse for doing it was really that we knew that the Art Center needed to listen. We needed to just sit back, be quiet, and listen. We needed to create an environment where people would start talking about their needs, what they hope for their future as it relates to art, as it relates to their children, as it relates to growing families, every other kind of topic that you can imagine. There was really no one way that we wanted to define it. So it's not meant to be a permanent space, in that if we determined that it was really important to continue to have a community space in that neighborhood, we would reach back around to the community to say, what's the best way to make this permanent? Does it continue to be under the Art Center's umbrella? Does it go to somebody else because they are meant to be the more long-term keeper of it? We haven't yet made that determination. It could maintain itself for a little while longer just under that idea. It's really, we're dependent on wonderful generosity of our board member, Brian McCandless, and his family for making it affordable for us to be there. So, some of it is based on that as well. But regardless, Troy is an area of a lot of little neighborhoods, and I love our downtown site very much so. And that's one neighborhood, and Fish Market is servicing a different one. And it made it clear that we needed to do that we needed to be in different places to really get to know people and take the time to build real relationships. So that's its intent.
That's great. What's that, Carmen?
Carmela, Belinda, I did just want to applaud the Art Center, Liz and folks, as someone that's been on the council now for going on 7 years, but also born and raised in Troy and was on the council in my late 20s. I always felt that there was that missing piece from the Art Center. I saw the value in the Art Center. I would pop down from time to time. I took a class as a youth. But saying that, I have definitely seen more activity in the neighborhoods. I mentioned this to Liz at the Hoosick Street unveiling, and I do applaud your outreach to the community, to the neighborhoods, and I have definitely seen a much more escalated effort in the neighborhoods, and I really, really love that. So I love you getting out there, spreading your wings rather than us to, folks have to come down. So I think it's a huge effort that I think the Art Center has implemented. And I'm really psyched about it.
Thanks.
I'd have to agree.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Danae.
I just wanted to agree that just by branching out slowly from the downtown core, it starts to spark ideas from people that maybe wouldn't have traveled downtown to even know, that these other programs existed. So as it all of the things in the master plan, all the little successes, it starts to seep out, and then it just, it's like a ripple effect, and pretty soon people are thinking about it. Oh, I really want to do something, in my neighborhood. And then the discussion starts, they talk to someone next to them, and then they, start building ideas off of each other. And next thing you know, they have, something happening, and it's a community effort. It gets everybody involved. So yeah, that's all I just wanted to add.
Yeah. And I want to sort of not only do that, but chime in on what Tania said, and everyone else. You know, I think one of the overall themes that we're learning as the master plan's been implemented is these sort of sticky moments, these conversations. You joke it's the Troy 20. You're trying to walk a block and run an errand, and like 20 minutes later, you're leaving the conversation that you had 10 feet outside of your door. Because I know I'm not the only one that has that problem. But that those sticky little conversations, and I think that's why it's so important to have these nexus points within the alleys, the fish market, and then enhancing that walkability of our city. And I know, like, one of the things that during COVID, walking, I walked a lot more, just to be out. And all of a sudden, you know, walking Franklin Alley, walking other alleys that were like close, they're cusps. They're going to be relatively low hanging fruit, tipping point projects, so that then we have momentum to take on more challenging places. And then pushing further and further and further into neighborhoods that 5 years ago I didn't walk into. And honestly, you know, Jade's work with the Uniting Line is this major bridge. It's a major, major bridge. And the Riverwalk is going to complement that quite a bit, to unite North Central, unite the neighborhoods that were divided by urban renewal. And we know that artists are pioneers, and they see things that they see opportunities where other people don't see them yet. And I think bringing those places where you can have ongoing conversations, sticky conversations where you're bumping into each other, whether that's physical space outdoors, something like the fish market, it's going to create connections, and those connections are going to lead to economic opportunities, a broader range of people spotting places where we can do really substantial work. And then it just snowballs on and on and on.
That's great. I like your, what did you call it? The Troy 20? I love that. That's great. And it's so true. And I don't even live in Troy, and I get stuck in Troy. So it's true, but what a nice community. Well, I want to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's time. So I want to thank our invitees. First of all, we are going to stay on for a few more minutes, but I think clearly there's a lot of enthusiasm for what's happened. We didn't get to talk as much about the future and really kind of planning for the future. So Belinda and I had an idea that we would probably want to schedule a follow-up conversation. So we will definitely do that. For those of you who want to stay on and ask any questions, please throw your question into the chat and we'll call on you. But if anyone wants to drop off, we just want to thank you for attending tonight, and do pay attention to the Art Center's website, which is artcentersonline.org, for updates about when the next conversation will be. We do want to kind of have a formal way to revisit the plan and have another conversation with everyone. So that will be happening. And for all of you who came, thank you. And please stick around. We are going to answer some questions for those of you who stay. So I'm going to just go right on into it. And Liz says, can we just stay on for a while? Absolutely, Liz, we're going to, but I just wanted to make sure if people did want to leave, they could, and that we'd thanked everyone. But I'm going to turn it over to Gwen. Gwen, do you want to unmute your mic and ask your question about funding and different percent for art programs?
Sure, thanks, Judy. We obviously have a lot going for us. We have a robust and a really well thought out plan. We've got a lot of projects under our belt, which I think Liz was talking about, proof of concept. I think there's a momentum in the community. And as Chris pointed out, we have a city administration that is very, very positive around public art, and the city council. One of the things in our mission is sustainability in a formal program. And we reinvent the wheel every time we fundraise for a new public art project. So my question is, really, of Rafe and Todd, have you seen cities our size do a percent for art program? And for anybody who doesn't know, that is generally a percentage of the project cost of a new development is put aside for public art. It usually has to be a city ordinance. So do you see cities our size doing this? And then for the people on the call in the city administration and Carmela in the council, is that a conversation that we should start in Troy to try to get a percentage for art program so that we can sustain this momentum?
Thanks, Gwen. I'm going to turn it over to Todd because he does have to leave in about 10 minutes, and then we'll turn to you, Reese.
Okay. Am I audible? It's a great question, and connecting it to the idea about sustainability is the right way of thinking about it. It's really not so much a matter of how big a city is; it's a matter of what stage of life a city is in. You tend to see percent for art programs in cities that have big capital programs, essentially dynamic capital programs. And you tend to see that in larger cities, of course, but also cities that are younger and quickly growing and building a lot of infrastructure like parks and libraries and transportation investments and things like that. I don't know what Troy's capital budget is like now, but cities that are more mature are investing their resources in other things, particularly community services, tend to look for other kinds of ways of funding their public art because their capital construction isn't as large. For cities, the other thing that's happening with percent for art, for those of you who aren't familiar with that basically means the city creates a policy or an ordinance by which a percent of the funds for each of its capital projects is used for public art in relationship to that project. So, if you're building a library, you take a percent of that library budget and you use it to include art in that library. What a lot of cities now that are more situated more like Troy are doing is thinking about more flexible tools like just lump sum capital budget allocations for public art that aren't necessarily related to a particular project, or allocations within a department. So, say within a parks department, for allocations there. So, I think the idea of sustainable city funding, it was a difficult question when we were in Troy before. Is certainly one worth looking at, especially if it can be used to leverage partnerships and resources from elsewhere. But it may need to be more flexible than a traditional public art or conventional public art program might be.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate that. Gwen, did that get at your question? Do you have a follow-up?
That's very helpful. And I just want to get that sustainability conversation started, and it may be something for our next panel. But thanks, that's helpful.
That's great. And we will, add that. I think it's always important. And thanks, Todd, for your thoughts on that. And Reese, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think one of the things that you're seeing in cities like Chattanooga is that it's a process, right? So they built up their sort of public art program over time and sort of proofed the concept. And I think we're in the process of that. I remember when Barb was talking about breathing lights, there was a lot, they had to change a lot of hearts and minds, right? People were like, what is this for? But when they see it in action and they see the impact in the community, you're starting to tell the story. So sustainable funding is always a tricky thing, but I think as we build up a track record of these projects and people see them in action, you can start making the kind of bigger asks, whether it's like a percentage of developers or, some smaller cities have like a public arts department that has like the equivalent of like a cabinet level position. It's a key part of the leadership of the city. So it's not this sort of afterthought or a line item that's at the bottom. It's part of the whole kind of holistic conversation of the city. And maybe that's where we want to move, right? So that every new project that the city promotes is also viewed through the lens of, of public art. Cities are doing this with sustainability, with equity. You're really viewing it through that lens, and maybe part of that is a public art lens that we need to apply to all projects that we're doing.
I just, if I could just add a little sobriety to it all, as the chief fundraiser behind all of these projects, I will say that the goodwill that we're building, we are not building new funding yet. And in fact, I'm actually wearing out some of the generosity and patience of our local funders. So I think as we get into a discussion around sustainability, I would not trust an organic, they will come to us method here, because it's been actually, I was just told by a funder last week as I presented the Light Festival that I want to do, that I simply just have too many projects in line and my ambition is higher than their ability to support them. So when we're ready, I do think that we want to talk about a more formal way to sustain these projects, because the only thing on my mind when we start these is, how am I going to pay for it? And I mean, it took us over a year to fund Uniting Line. And fine, it's great, it's good, and I can do it, but it's not, it ain't easy. So we do want to be a little bit more proactive and thoughtful around building those blocks.
Thanks, Liz. And yeah, Emily, go ahead.
Oh, and one of the things I really want to stress to this group is how uniquely positioned Troy is. We have one of the last accessible and undeveloped riverfronts in the Northeast, and our ability to not only connect with New York City, but also with the Erie Canal, and the kinds of tourism we're bringing here, and the type of, we're this perfect storm for a developer to come, which is our land prices are still relatively low, we have high density, and we have an undeveloped riverfront. And so I think it's very important for us as leaders in our community that every project that comes in front of us, filling in a blank space on our riverfront, we set incredibly high standards for. The best architects, the best materials, and built into that is a line item for public art. Now there eventually will come a point where you cannot rely on that development, but but like ideally that's going to be down the road. I see in Troy in the next 10 to 15 years, our population increasing by about 25,000 people. And I sincerely believe that. I think with the impacts of climate change, and housing prices, we're a very desirable city, and we have to be ready, and we are no longer in the begging position, please, please, please come here. Now we're in the, I choose you, I'll date you, I'll marry you, and I think we can obviously do that in a way that's very diplomatic. But I do think that we have much more leverage, and we need to really acknowledge that. And so, one of the things, and certainly like Carmelo and the rest of council, and I talk a lot about our, developers that are coming and asking for a tax break from the city or the county. And there may be opportunities for us to start pulling in the county to have a larger, more systemic pool of funding when people come here with their hand out asking for a tax break. Well, ain't nothing free. And so if you want a 30-year tax break, you better be ready to give a lot of money to help sustain the things for our community that are going to be really game-changing in the long run. And pulling in the county on that end is, that's an important piece, because we're really the jewel of Rensselaer County. So
Thank you, Emily. That's great. And clearly we need to continue talking about funding and the
Judy,
challenges
can I add one
there.
thing really quick?
I want to actually move on. We need to move on because I want to respect everyone's time. I want to get to the questions in the chat. So if you have a question, please use the chat and we'll get there. But there are several questions right now about geographic distribution. And I want to turn it over to Leon and see, do you want to ask your question live? And then we'll go to you, Mark.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lion McCandless. I want to introduce myself as a resident of North Central Troy, and I live just a block from the fish market. My father, Brian McCandless, is actually the board member who owns the fish market. And I would just like to make a request that as this master plan is executed, the geographic placement of these art installations is considered, because I know when I've been living in Troy now for 3 years, so I haven't been a long time resident, but when I tell my friends and family where I live, or just anyone, their first reaction is, oh my gosh, there's so much crime in Troy. And then their second reaction is, oh, Troy's really cool and artsy. And I'm like, yeah, great. So the art is what brought me here, but the crime is what will drive me away. And it seems that Troy PD is unable to make the improvements to the crime. It's there's a lot of issues going on, but what I love about the fish market is that it is a really good program for the youth in these neighborhoods who don't go to downtown. They don't see the art installations downtown. They aren't impacted by those dollars spent there. They're here in these neighborhoods. They're isolated. They don't have resources. I know I look the way I look and I don't fit into my neighborhood and people discredit me all the time, but I'm on the streets every day talking to my neighbors, talking to kids. And it's upsetting that the little kids in my neighborhood are kind of hearing gunshots is normalized, and seeing all the crime reports, that's like a normal thing. And so I just ask that some of the big dollars be spent outside of the downtown area, outside of the gateway, because at that location, who are you really appealing to but tourists and the bigger money that's in Troy? You're not appealing to the actual other residents of Troy who really need it and can be positively impacted by art. I've seen firsthand how therapeutic and meaningful art can be. I know Snug, which is located just a block north of the fish market, they're also getting into some public art programs, and that's really great. And I know the fish market was, my father understates this, but it was a significant financial burden to us, but it was so important that something like that come into our neighborhood, that's something that we decided was important and we wanted to pursue. And I want to do more things like that. And I think if there's bigger dollars spent outside of the downtown area, outside of the gateways, that will inspire people in those communities to then have their own community-driven art programs. It'll inspire more home ownership, because those are qualities that people look for in buying, and home ownership is healthy for every community. It has people more invested financially, emotionally, and I think it would just be a really great way to help make our community safer. It's a multifaceted approach, and I think art is a really important prong of that.
Lion, I'd like to answer some of that. One, the Art Center is trying to expand out into Lansingburg and South Troy. With the directive of the grant that we received, it was really viewed as something that we needed to do for the bridge, for safety reasons, and also just to get the community together and, and again, unite the neighborhoods. So we are specifically and directly looking at other locations to gain more insight into the communities that aren't downtown. I've met so many people on projects who I've told where I work, or I speak to them about, or inviting them to come to the Art Center. And it's those situations where they don't get out of their neighborhoods. And so we would like to continue to build opportunities and collaborations to create resources to share with other people, to also expand their reach and be able to do the same. I know, Jerry, we've talked multiple times about trying to reach some of the community, the young people in the community, and to build different opportunities through your organization as well. And we will be having some additional projects coming together with Unity House and their new location. So we do have some very important and future discussions to be had about this. And I appreciate you bringing this up. I appreciate what your family has done for the fish market and giving us that step into the community. But I do believe that there is a direction, there is a goal, and we can't be the only ones who do it at the Art Center. It has to be a collaborative conversation. We have to get the city involved. We have to get our stakeholders involved, and we will work very hard at doing that and getting, you know, our local artists represented within those projects as well.
That's great, Belinda. And I think it's important, I mean, incredibly important issue to raise, Lion, and something to remember that, you know, the Art Center is not inventing the wheel, and there's a lot of really amazing programs nationally that have used art as a way to revitalize communities, to make them safer, to heal communities, and perhaps really making sure that we tap into those national resources, know about those natural resources, learn about them as community and residents and teachers. And you know, there's a really quite an amazing work happening in other cities. Sadly, it's not a Troy problem. It's a problem in a lot of cities, and it's a problem that's getting worse in the last couple of years. So coming from Philly, I know specifically of many programs that are happening in Philly, and art has been a tremendous tool. So I think you're right on, Lion, that you know, that type of issues needs to be brought up in this conversation. So thank you.
I was going to say real quick, Judy.
Oh, sure, Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was going to say is, I'm glad that Lion brought that up. That is so tremendously important. As I stated, this will be for the third time. We started our organization. The vision for our organization came out of the building that the fish market is in right now. One pivot that the Art Center did make during like the pandemic time, I wanted to take note of, is that when all the boards were, all the businesses downtown boarded up their businesses during the time of the racial unrest in 2020. So like they boarded up that, and we got some of our young people to come and like draw paintings and draw different things on those boards to beautify downtown. This, you know, so that when the marchers came here, they wouldn't feel like they was in a ghost town or something like that. The young people that we involved in that project really, really enjoyed themselves. I mean, we went from business to business, and we asked the business owners, could we beautify those boards? And a lot of them said yes. That was something that they really enjoyed. I know that Jade is focused on working with the youth, and she's talked about you know, youth projects. And then even Carmelo even mentioned what she noticed under the bridge when they were working with the youth. I think that there has to be a more deliberate attempt to bring the youth in. And when we talk about funding, there's so much funding out there for gun violence prevention, all of these different things, and it's youth-based funding. So why not try to like permanently marry like a program to the Art Center? We got the people to do it, and you got everybody coming together. I think like when we talk about sustainability, there's always youth funding money out there. So maybe that's something that we need to think about, because we have to continue this. Like the young people, I know you partnered with KP's group when they were under the bridge painting the Uniting the Line, and that group, they really enjoyed it. My son participated in that also. So we have to really think about that and get outside of the box when we think about these issues that we're tackling.
Well said, Jerry. And you know, we heard a lot of similar things when we did the planning, and that's why we wrote helping connect youth to the levers of political power. I mean, I think Jade's program's doing that, United Line is doing that, Fish Market's doing that. Jerry, I think you're spot on that opens up funding opportunities. So thanks for adding that. That's great. I do have another question from Mark about locations and some suggestions. Mark, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Okay, so my name is Mark Stempian. I moved to the Capital District in 1999 from Buffalo, New York, where actually they have a mural program connected with the Albright Knox Art Gallery. But anyways, I did not live in Troy until the last 5 years. So I've lived in Troy for 5 years. I watched them build the seawall. I used to have a daily walk down the seawall to my bus stop. And I can't help but think, first of all, before I ask my question, I want to commend you guys for what you're trying to do here in Troy. It's great, because a city, it's impression that people have of a city, a lot of it has to do with art. So anyways, I could actually see some sort of maybe collaboration with RPI. You got RPI up the hill, an engineering school, engineering and art. I could have visualized some sort of interactive light show along the seawall as you walk. You know, there's some sort of light play. I could also see that on the wall as you're walking up Hoosick Street, from Stewart's to that plaza. I just think there's a lot of opportunity. I'm wondering if there was discussions about possible locations for future projects. But anyways, that's basically what I wanted to say. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. That's really wonderful. And, having, residents talk about locations is so important. And there are sites that are just so obvious. So we appreciate that feedback, and, stay tuned as we continue this conversation. On that note, we do need to wrap things up. And I think there's been a tremendous amount of energy around this conversation, and perhaps it's something that should happen frequently going forward, because there is a lot of momentum and a lot of things happening. And I think people are, like what I think Rafe was getting at, are starting to really see how successful these projects are and can be. And there's a real appetite, a growing appetite, which is wonderful. So, I think that the Art Center and the city have really been fearless in some ways, and just kind of experimenting and making this work. So I think they should really be applauded for that in this extremely difficult time. So it's been fun to launch a plan, but to really see them make it have it come to life. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for coming, but I'm going to turn it over to Liz to kind of wrap up and sign out for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Belinda, for pulling this together. Really what I wanted to say is the Art Center does have processes. I do think that we'll do this more often, obviously, perhaps quarterly. We have a committee that manages public art that Gwen chairs. There are ways that we continue to have a broader dialogue. I do believe that our emails. You can always check in with us and say this is something that we want to get involved in, as we will always punctuate our work with opportunities for public to weigh in on what's next. We did this today because we are at a wonderful crossroads of where will some of our energies go now that COVID is a little less scary. Can we get into some elements of the plan that were out of our reach for a while? How do we finish the Uniting Line program with placemaking under the bridge and lighting? And how do we serve our community? So these are all questions that we're asking, and we're very grateful for you to chip in and give us your thoughts. And I hope it continues. My big wrap up here is to invite you to continue in any way that's comfortable for you. So thank you, Judy, and thank you, Belinda, and thank you for everyone participating in this. And we are just at the beginning of this in every way. So thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you.
All right,
Everyone,
we're gonna
stay safe out there. It's snowy. It's pretty snowy.
Everyone be careful and safe. Have a good night.
I'm safe. Good night.
good night.